In a world where life totals start at 40, where opponents number not 1 but 3, one mechanic dared to rise up and immediately got left out of the room. For eons, civilizations have asked the question, can you win a multiplayer game by attacking with creatures? Ancient philosophers debated it. Great scientists tested it. Entire decks rose and fell, attempting to deal with combat damage to more than one opponent. And through countless millennia, one truth echoed through the cosmos. Aggro kind of stinks.
Hello everyone, my name is Really Bad at Magic the Gathering, or Really Bad for short, and today we are gathered here to mourn the passing of a dear friend. They live fast, die young, and they never draw a card past turn 4. That's right, today we're talking about none other than the great ball of flame that is Aggro in EDH. We'll discuss the real pitfalls of running this deck strategy and discuss whether or not those issues can be mitigated, and if so, how. Aggro has always been Magic's original stop thinking, start swinging strategy. Back in the simpler days, when creatures were just little cardboard dudes and not fully illustrated tax returns, Aggro was king. Turn sideways in the early game, apply pressure, force trades, and end the game before the big mana behemoths woke up. Red deck wins was a legitimate strategy, but then EDH came along, and suddenly the aggro player looks around and goes, everyone's at 40 health? I have to hit 3 people by myself with 1 combat step? And you have board wipes and single target removal? Aggro realized it wasn't in Kansas anymore, but instead within a multiplayer nightmare scenario where kill the aggro player first is basically a universal law. But what exactly are the issues with aggro, and can they be remedied? The first issue of aggro is a problem within the very nature of Commander. You have 3 other opponents. 3 other opponents who at any given point in time have their guns pointed to one another, Western style, except it's not just 1 bullet to kill each other, but rather many, many, many bullets. As was alluded to earlier, 40 life per player is a lot. And although you may be thinking that commander damage mitigates the total 120 life you must chew through as an aggro player, it's still a whopping 63 damage to dish out. The unfortunate reality is that the math behind aggro simply doesn't scale for a 4-player format. And this can even be extended into your mana curve and late game threats that you have available to you in your aggro deck. Most aggro decks function on either pooping out enough small creatures to love tap your opponents into submission, or by throwing every piece of metal in your collection on top of your commander. However, that doesn't mean that you have a lot of late game threats, as opposed to the Animar player who's pooping out 10 Eldrazi every time he breeds. The second issue is that the aggro strategy doesn't necessarily align with table politics. Once the table sees you put belt to ass on the Urza player, they are way more inclined to be on the defensive. Defensive meaning the remaining 2 players will team up against you, because only then is an alpha strike worse than a combo? But why? Because they saw your deck's power. Once a player is knocked out, or getting close, everyone comes together as if it were a nuclear disarmament meeting during the Cold War, and I promise you, the aggressor never won. The third issue is that it got soft banned from lower brackets where they could truly shine. With the October 26th bracket system update relegating turn 6 and turn 4 wins to brackets 3 and 4 respectively, sometimes aggro is simply too fast for low brackets, which results in them operating against combo giants and those suboptimal CEDH decks. My Delina deck is crying. Shout out to my Discord for that point. The fourth issue is that, unfortunately, aggro is incredibly fickle. If you decide to go the Voltron aggro route, guess what? You're only one Swords to Plowshares away from contemplating where your life choices went wrong. But really bad! I have Swiftfoot Boots and Champion's Helm on my commander! A Braid, Suplex, Heliod's Intervention. Okay, but wait, it's actually an Aura command! Withering Torment, Reclaiming Vines, in Paw Patch formation. Look, I don't want to be cheeky, but I just want to lay it out clearly. As an aggro deck, you're pretty susceptible to removal, and this isn't even considering board wipes, which is arguably worse for an aggro player. So how do you make aggro any good? Spoiler, you can, kind of. Aggro isn't bad, it just needs a little therapy. Here's how I think you can make it work. The first thing I think it needs is that you need card draw, and a lot of it. Traditional aggro can run out of steam faster than a Y'shtola deck can play an Ophidian Eye. In EDH, if you're not drawing 2 to 3 extra cards a turn, you're dead. And this is compounded with aggro, as most often you're mag dumping your hand in hopes of squeezing out some damage. So we can solve this by running repeatable draw, like Mask of Memory, allowing you to draw 2 cards and discard 1 whenever you deal combat damage to an opponent. This allows you to do a phenomenal job of filtering your hand out. Or you could run something like the Professional Facebreaker, ramp and card advantage. Oh my goodness! Or if you're focused on the artifacts being played, you could run something like Pure Steel Paladin to gain some extra card draw. Or if you're a bad human being like I am and play Blue Farm, you run Timna the Weaver. Need I say any more? Granted, this doesn't emphasize focusing down one opponent, which I would recommend in an aggro deck. Last but not least, you got all of the swords, specifically Sword of Fire and Ice. You deal damage, you draw a card, and you get protection. What is there not to like for an aggro deck? But moreover, simple card draw effects like Faithless Looting, Ren's Resolve, any cantrip, all of these short-term draws will suffice in assisting you in either seeing more creatures to hit people with or crazy artifacts to throw on your commander. All you have to remember is this: swinging is good, swinging and drawing is better, and swinging and drawing 2 cards is how you win. The second way to make aggro maybe viable is to hopefully focus down one player and, as a result of that, the table as a whole. If aggro only hits one person at a time, by all intents and purposes, you'll fall behind. However, I do believe that this is where aggro shines. So, let's expedite the process. Consider Kedis Emberclaw Familiar, an absolute powerhouse for any deck. Kedis enables you to target one person down and still decimate the other's life totals. Meanwhile, you could use other cards like Perforos, who will burn the table whenever you play more and more creatures. But let's say you hate Kedis and Perforos. So, I would recommend using a damage doubler. While any of these options will paint a target on your back, they will at least expedite your opponent's deaths as well. Think about cards like Dictate of the Twin Gods, Twin Flame Tyrant, Fiery Emancipation, City on Fire, and Torbrand Thane of Redfell. The list goes on. These will absolutely give you the extra boost in damage that you need to make your opponents cry that much faster. But why not make them cry more with extra combat steps? This is one of my favorite ways to pull something out of my ass in my aggro deck. Karlach, Fury of Avernus, Bloodthirster, Aggravated Assault, Aki Battle Squad, Aurelia the War Leader. There are many ways to squeeze in an extra combat, and when you only have to deal 21 commander damage to someone, sometimes that extra combat is all you need. The third way to make aggro semi-viable in EDH is to make sure you protect your threat. Voltron, without protection, for instance, is just a very fancy suicide mission. I would consider using things like the Swiftfoot Boots, the Lightning Greaves, the Commander's Plate, as all of these items will help you keep around the creatures you need most. Ideally, your commander if that's who you're aggroing with. Meanwhile, you have other things like the white protection spells. Think about cards like Flawless Maneuver, Teferi's Protection, or Clever Concealment. I would also say that the red redirect spells are awesome here. Untimely Malfunction, Tybalt's Trickery just being a counterspell, Deflecting Swat, the brand new Redirect Lightning, Return the Favor, Ricochet Trap, and the list goes on and on for how you can protect your board. These are key for making sure you can protect the pieces that you need. Another thing you can do to make aggro a little bit more viable is to use politics as a secret weapon. You have to convince the table that you are not the threat, while you quietly assemble a war crime made of swords and auras. Some phrases that can help include, "I'm not attacking you, I'm attacking the arch enemy," or, "If you let me keep this creature, I promise I will delete the combo player." Or, "Look, I'll be honest, this is an aggro deck. My board will not scale. If I fall off later, you gotta let me cook now." Aggro lives and dies by table talk. It mostly dies, but, positivity. The last tip I have for making aggro viable is to have a plan for the later turns. Aggro decks that don't scale will lose games that go long. So, I would maybe run a few late game cards that can turn your late game into a fireworks show. Think about cards like Jeska, Thrice Reborn, because triple damage is a lot, and it benefits off of your commander being inevitably removed a million times. Or, I would consider large late game threats like the Ancient Copper Dragon, or really any scary dragon, because they will continue to scale like crazy and they can be a beefy blocker. Or I would think about cards that generate repeatable value, like Cathar's Crusade. Yes, maybe this doesn't work as well, but having some sort of way to keep the math of your board similar to others is by throwing counters on them, or ignoring the math by giving them a way to slip by without being blocked. I will say though that for the most part, an aggro deck's turn 10 play is to simply draw more cards, hopefully replay some different value pieces that fall within the same roles, and keep twisting cardboard sideways. Remember this for aggro: early pressure and hopefully 1 to 2 knockouts, plus your mid-game's draw, plus a late game burst equals a decimated and probably frustrated pod. So, after thinking about all the ways to make aggro better, is aggro in EDH bad? Yes, but that's not to say it's not fun. I would say that playing an aggro deck is similar to getting back with your toxic ex. It's fun for a night, but it's probably not the best for your mental health in the long run. Play aggro if you love turning things sideways. Play it if you love being dramatic. And play aggro if you'd rather go out in a blaze of glory than live a quiet life. And hey, if you found this helpful, mildly entertaining, or you just like watching me give aggressively mediocre advice for the game, you know what to do. I also have social medias and a super cool and awesome Discord channel for you all to join. If you stayed this long, please comment, "Red Deck wins." Keep being awesome, keep being just who you are, and I will see y'all next week. Peace!